Hey guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com, and in this week's ukulele lesson, Matt's going to be teaching you how to play Margaritaville. Now, this has to be one of my favorite Jimmy Buffett tunes because every time I hear it, it transports me into the summertime vibes, which is my favorite season of the year. Now, from a fingerstyle standpoint, this tune, or I should say this arrangement, has a really nice blend of strumming and finger picking. So you get to work on the best of both worlds in this arrangement. And I would say it's probably going to be best suited for the intermediate player. So let's take a step back now. Let's talk a little bit about this lesson. So in this video, Matt is going to teach you the entire arrangement, but if you want to get the tabs to print off and follow along with, that's going to be available at this link right here, or you can go to the site rockclass101.com, do a search for Margaritaville. Now also on that page will be the really cool interactive on-screen tab viewer. Now this is a great feature where you can hit play, you can watch the tabs scroll across in real time, you can highlight bars to loop sections, slow it down to any speed you wish, just a great asset in learning this tune that much easier. All right, so without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and hand it off to Matt to teach you how to play this, and then I'll catch you at the end of the video.
Hello, my name is Matt Dahlberg, and in today's lesson, we're going to learn a solo high G ukulele arrangement of Margaritaville by Jimmy Buffett. Let's go ahead and dive into the intro, bringing the camera down to my ukulele. We're gonna start by playing 7 on the E string with our ring finger, along with 5 on the A string with our index finger. We're going to take our index and middle fingers here on our playing hand, and we're going to pluck the E and the A strings together 3 times. Now, if you're more comfortable using a different combination of fingers down here, that's okay, but you'll notice I'll be using this as we go through it. Then I'm going to take this shape here, I'm going to move it down 2 frets, so I'm at 5 on the E and 3 on the A, pluck that, and slide it right back up to 7 and the 5. In time, measure 1, pretty straightforward, sounds like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and... Going into the second measure, it's going to be, well, the exact same thing. So in time, 2 and 3 and 4 and... Going on to the third measure now, we're going to move this shape up, index finger to the 7th fret of the A string, middle finger here on the 8th fret of the E string. So we have 8 on the E and 7 on the A. I'm going to pluck this 3 times. Then I'm going to move back down to the 7 and 5 with my index and ring fingers here. Back down to the 5 and 3. Finally down to 3 and 2 with my middle finger here on the 3 of the E string and my index finger here on the 2 of the A. So in time, measure 3 sounds something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and... Going on to the fourth measure, it's going to hold this to start it, and then it's going to switch to this little riff that I really like to play. And what it sounds like is this. And the way that we play it is we hold our index finger here across the 2nd fret of the C, E, and A, and we add our middle finger here on the 3rd fret of the E string. And we're going to pluck the C string, and then we're going to immediately hammer on with our ring finger to the 4th fret of the C string. And then we're going to play the 3 on the E immediately after that. So the thing to practice is just this. Get that sort of timing and feel. Then you're going to play the 2 on the A, which is already there. 3 on the E. Take that ring finger off so that you can play 2 on the C. So measure 4 in time is something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and... And the pair of measures 3 and 4 should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and... And now that you can hear the whole intro, here's measures 1, 2, 3, and 4 to complete the intro section. 2 and 3 and 4 and... From here we go on to the verse, and we're going to be using some strumming with this. We're going to be holding that same sort of G chord that we held during our little riff. We're going to start by plucking the G string and then the C string. And then we're going to do a down, up, and we're going to play over this G5. So our pinky finger stretches out here at the 5th fret on the A. We're going to go down, up, down. Then we're going to come up on this G sus4. And the way we do that is we take our middle finger here and we collapse it so that the 3rd fret of the A string is fretted in addition to the 3rd fret of the E. And we take our pinky finger off. We're going to come up. So that whole measure in time is something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into measure 6 now, which is the second part of this verse, we're going to essentially miss the strings going down to start the bar because we're carrying it over from the previous. And we're going to come up back on the 5 here on the A string. And then we're going to play the riff that we did at the end of measure 4. Exact same riff. So it's going from kind of strumming into finger picking. And measure 6 should sound like this in time. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And measures 5 and 6 should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. A quick little tip is you'll notice that when I start strumming on the 0, 2, 3, 5, that first chord, I kind of collapse that middle finger a little preemptively. So it's ready to go when I take it off. So from here we go on to measure 7, and measure 7 is going to look very familiar because it is exactly the same as measure 5. So in time that sounds like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then going on to measure 8. Measure 8 is almost identical to measure 6. The only difference is instead of doing an up strum with that 5 back on like we did in 6, now here on measure 8, we're going to come up on just the 2 on the A. So we take that little middle finger and we make it so that it's not that little bar anymore, but rather just there on the 3rd fret of the E string, leaving the A string on the 2nd fret here with the bar on the index finger. We're going to come up there. And then we do the same riff we did before. So measure 8 is actually exactly the same as measure 6, except for that chord that we play on the up strum. So in time, measure 8 should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And the pair of measures together should sound something like this. Bars 7 and 8. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going right on to measure 9, we're going to play the same thing we did at the start of 5 and 7, just the open G and the 2 on the C. Then we're going to do a down, up like we have before, but now over a different chord. We're going to go up to this higher G, take your middle finger, place it on the 7th fret of the C string, ring finger here on the 7th fret of the E string, and finally your index finger here on the 5th fret of the A string. We're going to do a down, up, down on this. Quick tip, notice how all my fingers are sort of pointed towards my shoulder, the fingernails. It's really hard to do this when your fingers are straight up and down. Tilting them can really help. So after the down, up, down there, I'm going to come up on this little G6. All that I do is take my pinky finger here, stack it underneath on the 7th fret of the A string, and do an up strum. So all of measure 9 should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going on to measure 10, it's going to do an up strum on the 0, 7, 7, 5. So we take that pinky back up. And then I'm going to finger pick my E and A strings. I'm going to play the 7 and 5 that are already there twice. And then I'm going to play 5 and 3. And to do this, I'm going to take my middle finger off. These two fingers are in the same positions, just moving down 2 frets to 5 and 3. And then I move my index finger down one more to 2 on the A. Add my middle finger here to 3 on the E, and pluck just those two together. So measure 10 in time sounds something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And measures 9 and 10 should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going right into measure 11, we're going to play a D chord. I find this chord to be pretty challenging when I was first learning it, because what we want to do is play 2 on the G, C, E, and 0 on the A by taking our index finger and barring it across those 3 strings, leaving the A string open. You want to make sure that where your bar fits in is sort of in the divot of where the finger will bend so that you can get the clearance for that open A. Now it's really important to play it this way for this because of what comes next. So work on getting that flexibility on this chord. We're going to do a down strum, and then we're going to kind of mute the strings. Just take the left hand here and touch the strings and kind of just strike it muted. And then what I do is with this index, I bar completely across to make this part a little bit easier, because I'm going to play this riff that sounds like this. And to play that, I'm going to play the 2 on the E, and then I'm going to hammer on immediately to 3 on the E, and then hammer immediately to 5 on the E, using my middle on the 3 and my pinky here on the 5. And then I'm going to play the 5 again. Then I'm going to take that off and play 3, take that off and play 2. So that riff's going to come back time and time again. It's pretty challenging, but in time, measure 11 should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into measure 12 now. Measure 12, you're going to play the 2 on the C, the 2 on the G, take the pinky, add it on 5 of the A, and finally play the 2 on the G again. Pretty straightforward measure. In time, 12 should sound like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And so that you can hear the pair, here's measures 11 and 12 together. Should be something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going on to measure 13 now. Measure 13 still holds that bar across 2. You're going to play the 2 on the C and 2 on the E together, then the 2 on the G. Now we're going to do some strumming on a D7 chord. Just take that middle finger, add it on the 3rd fret of the A string, do a down, up, down on it. Then come up on a D6. All that you do is take that middle finger off, make sure the bar is all the way across all 4 strings, and come up. So measure 13 in time should be something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going right into measure 14, we're going to come up on the D7 again, and then play that little riff that we did on measure 11. So measure 14 in time sounds something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And so that you can hear the pair of these two, measures 13 and 14 should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into measure 15 now, you're going to play the 2 on the C, do a nice little mute, and then you're going to do a down, up, down on the D7, and then you're going to do an up on the D6. Very similar to what we did on measure 13. In time, 15 sounds something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going right into 16, measure 16 is exactly the same in every single way to measure 14. So we do the up on the D7, followed by the riff. So in time, 16 sounds something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And the pair now of 15 and 16 should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into measure 17, we're going to start off the same way we did on measure 15. We're going to play the 2 on the C, which is still there with the bar. And then we're going to play a mute. Then we're going to play this higher D, just keep the bar there, add the pinky finger here to the 5th fret of the A string. We're going to do a down, up, down on this chord. Big stretch here. We're going to take our pinky and slide it up to 7 on the A. Notice that when I do this, my index finger kind of hugs the fret right up here and kind of turns a little bit to make that stretch happen. I know it's a big one, but you can really push it when you get comfortable with your index sort of turning away and hugging the frets. But we've got that 2, 2, 2, 7 here. And we're going to be doing an up strum on that. So measure 17 is something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going on to measure 18, lots of strumming here. We're going to come up on the 2-2-2-5, so stretch the pinky back down, up. We're going to miss, and then we're going to come up again on that, then a down on that, and then up on a D7 by adding the middle finger here to 3 on the A, taking the pinky off, and a down on the 2-2-2-2. So all strumming there on measure 18, and that's going to sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And the pair together, measures 17 and 18, should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into measure 19, some familiarity. We're going to play the open on the G. Then we're going to mute the strings. And we're going to do the riff that we did at the beginning of the song. Same one from the intro. So measure 19 in time should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Then going into measure 20, this turns around into the chorus. It's the end of the verse. We're going to move up to this high G7, take this index finger that was barred here, move that bar up to fret 5 on the C, E, and A. Play the G and C together. Then the ring finger should be here on 7 of the E string to play that. 5 on the A, part of the bar, and then the 7 on the E right there with the ring again. So measure 20, really straightforward. Sounds like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And now measures 19 and 20 to actually finish this verse should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. So now from this point, we go on to the chorus. So let's go and hear what the whole verse sounds like. That's going to be measures 5 all the way through measure 20. Should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. From here, we now go on to the chorus of the tune. And with this chorus, we're going to start with measure 21, playing this really nice open C chord. Pretty straightforward. We're going to play open on the open on the C and the E strings together. Then we're going to play open on the G. Then we're going to play 7 on the A with our pinky finger here twice. And then we're going to slide this pinky down to 5 on the A and play that once. This is pretty tricky. There's some difficult syncopation here with how the melody works. So pay extra close attention to the rhythm and also listen to the original, kind of get this feel. It can be very challenging. But in time, this bar should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into measure 22, that 5 on the pinky there with the A string sets up this D chord by barring across the 2nd fret with the index finger. And you can pluck or strum through all 4 strings. Then you're going to play 3 on the A, taking this middle finger there, placing it, and play it twice. And then 2 on the A, taking that finger off. And then play 3 on the A again, and then 2 on the A again. A little bit tricky, so measure 22 sounds like this in time. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And the 2 measures together, which is one of the hardest parts of the song because of that syncopation, accents on offbeats, should sound something like this in time. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into measure 23 now, we're going to play this G sus4. The way that we can play this is with our index finger barred across the 2nd fret, then our middle finger sort of barred here on the 3rd fret of the E and the A. And we can play all 4 strings. And then to play the 2 on the A, we can raise it off with the middle finger here. Alternatively, we can also, just because it's so hard to play the 2 quickly after this, and it needs to happen quickly, you can take this middle finger off to play that 2 on the A. And then play the open G. And then 2 on the C, 3 on the E, putting that middle finger back on if you did take it off. And then 2 on the C. So measure 23 in time sounds something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into measure 24. Measure 24 is exactly the same as measure 20, which was our little turnaround into the chorus. Should sound something like this in time. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Super straightforward. And the 2 of those together now, 23 and 24, should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into the next bar here, we're going to go to measure 25, C chord with that pinky on the 7th fret. Play the open C and E together. I really like this part. This is a little harmony, followed by our melody, which is searching for my. So you see I just play the open C and open E, then I play the 7 on the A 4 times. In time it sounds like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then from here it moves to a D chord. So you're going to take the index finger barred across 2, play the C and E again. Play it nice and soft because of another little harmony fill. You're going to play 5 on the A, and that's the word lost, and then shaker of salt. So the way we do that is we play 5 on the A, and then we play 5 on the A again, slide it up to 7 on the A, slide it back down to 5 on the A, take it off with the index still barred there for 2 on the A. So in time, that sounds like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And measures 25 and 26 together sound like this. Again, extra attention to that little C chord being really nice and soft, the little D chord being nice and soft because they're harmony fill with the rest of it being the melody. Should sound like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then from here we go on to measure 27, and measure 27 is going to look pretty familiar because now we're going back to that sort of riff that we've played a few times through with this song. We're going to be holding this 2 on the bar, and we're going to be muting, and then we're going to do our little hammer-on that we did in the intro of the song. So measure 27 in time sounds like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going on to measure 28 now. Measure 28 is also going to be very familiar because it's that same turnaround we used to get now into the chorus with that G7. So it's going to be like this in time. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And the pair of those two measures together should sound something like this. 27 and 28. 2 and 3 and 4 and. From here, we go on to measure 29, and here at measure 29, what we're going to do is we're going to play our open C and E, open G, 7 on the A 3 times, and that's some people, and then the last thing for the word say is this awesome D chord by moving the pinky up to 9 on the A, adding the index finger here to 5 on the E, and the middle finger here to 6 on the C. Pluck the C, E, and A together. And that's all of measure 29, which is going to sound something like this in time. 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that switch on the offbeat of 4 is a little tricky, but it sounds really good. We go on now to measure 30, which is really straightforward. We're going to take our pinky off, and you see that index is barred across the 5 on the E and A. That allows us to play our 5 on the A. Then 7 on the A with our ring, and 9 on the A with the pinky. So measure 30 in time is something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and the two together, 29 and 30, should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now we go on to measure 31. We're going to take this shape here and we're just going to move it up to be at 11 on the C string with the middle finger and 10 with the index on the E and the A. Pluck all 4 strings, or strum through, whatever you want. And then we're going to play 10 on the E, and then 11 on the C. Really easy measure. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going on to measure 32, we move down to a C chord. We're going to use our ring finger here on the 3rd fret of the A string. Strum through with our thumb or pluck it, doesn't really matter. Then we're going to play 3 on the A twice, followed by a D7, just taking the index, stacking across the 2nd fret, leaving the ring finger where it is here, and pluck all 4 or strum through. So measure 32 in time is something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And the two measures together, 31 and 32, should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going now into measure 33, we're going to move up to this same little riff thing that we did at the very beginning of the song. So we do that with our ring and middle fingers here on 8 and 7 of the E and A. Then we move down the ring, so it's on 7 of the E, index here on 5 of the A, and then we move that down one more to 5 and 3. Same little thing that we did at the beginning of the song. So 33 in time should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into measure 34, we're going to still be holding this little shape here, and we're going to play 3 on the A twice. And then we're going to slide down to 2 on the A, play that, and then open on the G twice. This is a really tricky little rhythmic part. It can be hard to hear, especially slow. So listening to the performance can certainly help, and then just trying to get the song in your head. Nothing beats listening to Jimmy Buffett. So make sure you get that sound in your head at the end of the melody as it goes through. And so measure 34 in time should sound like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And measures 33 and 34 should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into measure 35 now, we're going to go back to that sort of riff now, starting at 7 and 5. And going down to 3 and 2. So we do 7 and 5 on the E and the A. 3 times. Slide these fingers down 2 frets, so it's at 5 and 3. Play that once. And then slide down to 3 and 2 with your middle and index, and play that once. So measure 35 in time should be something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. As we go on to measure 36 here, really straightforward measure. All that we do is play open on the G, and then we go back to that same high G chord that we used earlier, the 0, 11, 10, 10. And we can strum through or pluck through, doesn't really matter. 36 in time is something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And measures 35 and 36 should sound something like this in time. 2 and 3 and 4 and. A little bit of rubato and slowing down there is totally fine. So that you can hear it, here is the whole chorus. This is starting with measure 21, going all the way through 36. Should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And there you have it. There is Margaritaville. Lots of syncopation, which means accents on offbeats. And truthfully, it's easier to play them full speed once you have them comfortable than it is to slow it back down. So when you're practicing it slow is okay, and then kind of work it up. Try to get that feel of what the syncopation should sound like, and then trust your musicality as you're playing it through. And if you ever are in doubt, go listen to the original or check out the recording here. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below, and I'll look forward to seeing you all on the next lesson here on Rock Class 101. Thank you so much.
All right, guys, so this week's ukulele lesson was a lot of fun. Every time I hear this tune, I'm instantly transported into summertime vibes. So I just absolutely love this tune for that reason. Now, I wanted to give you a friendly reminder that if you did want to get the tabs to print off and keep for your records, that was available at this link right here. Or you can go to the site, rockclass101.com, do a search for Margaritaville. Now, also on that page was the really cool interactive on-screen tab viewer. So you can literally hit play, you can watch that tab scroll across in real time, you can highlight bars to loop sections, slow it down, all that fun jazz. So guys, again, I hope you enjoyed learning this tune, and we will catch you in the next one. Take care.